All right, we're going to begin our notes on samples. This is page 11 of the note spiral. While economical and easy to run and unbiased, simulations have a couple of major limitations. First, in order to run a simulation, we must know something about the population. We must know the parameter of interest. For instance, in the oil well simulation, we needed to know the percentage of time that we expected to strike oil. Well, what if we didn't know that? And much of the time, we don't know anything about the parameter. For instance, we don't know the percent of deformed blood cells in your body. And as a result, in order to do that, we would need to take a sample of your blood. We don't know what percent of the population supports a specific candidate. So once again, we have to take a survey to act as a sample survey to estimate that. Further, simulations do not allow us to test whether or not the claim percentage is correct. We just assume that it is correct. So in order to do something like that, we're going to have to do a survey to find out if it is, or do an experiment. For instance, we claimed the oil well, the percentage of times we struck oil was 20% of the time. But what if it were really different? What if it were 15? What if it were 35? Well, that would impact our results. So consequently, we have to move on to collecting a sample. Specifically, we talk about good samples. So the question is, what do we do when we don't know a population parameter and conducting a census is not appropriate? The answer, well, I've already told you, we take a sample. And while that sample sounds simple enough, it leads us to the next question. What is a sample? A sample is merely a subset of the population, but it needs to be a good sample, and a good sample needs to be representative of the population. So I'm going to go through a little scenario here. It's kind of in fun, but it'll kind of give you the idea of the importance of taking a good sample. So if I wanted to suggestions for a theme song for this year's Reagan students, and I wanted to be representative of the students, instead of performing a census and asking all of the students, I decided to take a sample or a subset of the students. And so here's a couple ways I could go about collecting that subset and see if you would like this idea. I could go ask 25 students who were sitting together in the lunchroom. And my question to you, would that be a good sample? I could, you know what, since I have a freshman advisory, I could go out and ask them what their idea is for the theme song. I could go into or how about this? I could go into the teacher's lounge because I know you love the idea that the teachers come up and get suggestions for the song there. Or better yet, let's get some Stone Oak moms and I can go ahead and attend the PTA meeting and ask them for suggestions. So which of those methods would you suggest I use and how do you feel about them? Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that you don't really like any of them. And the problem with the 25 students sitting together in the cafeteria is they're probably friends. And they're probably, and so when we choose, when I survey them, they probably have the same likes and dislikes are very similar. So they represent themselves, but do they represent the entire campus? And we'll just go out on a limb here and say freshmen are not the same type of people as seniors are. So what the freshmen want as a song is probably not what the seniors want. Teachers think they know what you guys want, but we don't. So the teachers round it out, and I'm just gonna let you figure out what the problem is with the Stone Oak moms. All right, so while samples can be excellent way to determine, make determinations about a population, samples must be representative of the population so that we, in order to make generalizations. All right, if we're going to make accurate generalizations about the population, the samples must be representative of the population, which in our song category means I need to represent freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors in the survey somehow. And I would need to get a broad spectrum of students to make sure that a lot of different tastes were represented. Again, a good sample is one that is representative of the population. While this seems obvious, it isn't easy to do as one may think. If you're having trouble, believe me, consider who I should ask about choosing a theme song for Reagan and give me a list of those people. And as soon as you give me a list, know that it was your list, and no one else is probably going to give me the exact same list. So it's probably not the most representative. So how do we collect a good sample? So in summary, a sample is a proportion of the population which is studied to draw conclusions about the characteristics of the whole populations. A sample must be representative of the population in order to be useful. In other words, in order to make generalizations. And so you probably should write that in there, in order to make generalizations. No conclusions should be drawn from poorly collected data. That is going to be key, and you're going to learn a whole lot of that in this next section. So no conclusions can be drawn from poorly collected data or badly designed experiments or studies. So we'll talk about how to make good selections next week, but right now I'm going to introduce you to the idea that it's difficult to do that, and I'm going to talk about bias, and I'm going to do so in the next video. I say I'm going to do that. I got to pause this thing.